They're terrified of the truth. I just want to take a moment, because it's leading our bulletin as well, the fact that Gary Lineker has said that he is not going to apologise for describing Suella Braverman's language, which is not dissimilar to the language of 1930s Germany, as being not dissimilar to the language of 1930s Germany. And you may be wondering why he, in particular, garners such attention and such pearl-clutching fury from sections of the media that normally get to spew their bile absolutely uninterrupted and unchallenged. That's what they're terrified of. It's a shame that the rest of the media has to almost follow the trawler like seagulls, an agenda set by the biggest beasts in the jungle. But in case you need help understanding it, Lineker's got millions of followers on Twitter. I think he's got about 7 million. And there's a view, obviously, among non-dom billionaires that nobody should be able to have that platform, that sized platform, unless they're in our pocket. If you're a non-dom billionaire like Rupert Murdoch or Viscount Rothermere, and you're in the business of dividing the population in order to keep your agendas popular, and you're in the business of installing governments that will be deeply sympathetic to the interests of incredibly wealthy people, and one of the best ways of doing that is by demonising refugees or any other handy part of the population like single mothers or nurses, then the reason why you spend billions of pounds on these organs, often they run at a loss. The reason why you do it is because you make your profit elsewhere. You make it in power and influence, and the money that you make as a consequence of helping to install governments that are dedicated to the interests of the very, very wealthy. So when someone's wealthy enough not to be frightened of you, it's kryptonite. Carol Vorderman is the guest on Full Disclosure this week. Carol, self-made woman who is secure, she explains this to me in the interview, secure enough not to be frightened of what they can do to her, in the context of either having your livelihood damaged or taken away, or having your reputation traduced and maligned in public. Lineker's the same. Lineker, a supremely successful footballer, most successful striker of his generation, an actual golden boot winner in an England shirt. One of the first players to travel to other countries to play, actually learned the languages, speaks Japanese, I think, certainly Spanish, and they don't know what to do with it because he's not frightened of them. And the people who do what I do for a living, the commentators, the columnists, the pundits, they hate it because they're still frightened, even as they go to battle for the interests of the owners, and they spend their days trying to whip up hatred of refugees or nurses or railway workers. Deep down somewhere inside, they hate the fact that Lineker can somehow ply a trade and enjoy financial security that means he's immune to the horrific abuses that can be visited upon public figures. What's he done? He's issued a tiny tweet describing a hideous policy, a policy that is being condemned by everybody from the British Board of Deputies of British Jews right through to the United Nations. But it's a football commentator, a football broadcaster, a sports broadcaster that they're having kittens about. Why? Because he's got the platform. You see, you can write off lefty lawyers or activist civil servants or Labour politicians, but you can't write off a football legend who's the best sports broadcaster the country's seen since, I don't know, really, Desmond Lynam probably. They can't do it, so they have to keep him out. They can't take him on because he's right. They can't take him out because he's powerful. They can't frighten him into silence because he's not reliant upon them or frightened of them. So they have to silence him. They have to shut him down, because you can't have people like Gary Lineker going around telling the actual truth about these vampires and about the media organisations that install the vampires in power. The people over there don't really give a hoot about people in small boats. I don't mean that they're callous and don't care. They mean it's not a big issue to them, but they know they can turn it into a big issue for the people who will allow politicians to preside over what we've seen happen to the police, what we're hearing now today about what's happened to the police, what we know has happened to the NHS and to schools and to rivers and to the cost of living and to energy and to every other corner of our country. Don't look at that. Have a look over there at the people in small boats. And for someone to stand up and say, don't be so disgusting. This is reminiscent of 1930s Germany in terms of language, early Nazi language. It's just true. So why is everyone going so mad about it? Because he's not frightened. How many people can you think of off the top of your head who can stand up and say what Gary Lineker has said on a massive public platform, as opposed to the people on a massive public platform who can agree with everything the government is saying and doing? Go on, have a think. Let's just say the names out loud. How many people with a really big platform, let's just say a 7-figure platform in this country today, can stand up and say what Gary Lineker has said about this toxic government and this toxic bill and this toxic policy and this toxic racist rabble-rousing? How many, name them, go on. How many Sun columnists? How many Daily Mail columnists? Go on. How many Times columnists? I think there's probably one or two who can come close, but they're being squeezed out now by a new editor called Tony Gallagher, who's a former editor of The Sun and the Daily Telegraph. So name them. Name the British figures, the public figures in Britain with big 7-figure followings, or bigger, 8-figure ideally, who can actually stand up and say in public what Gary Lineker is saying. Name them. So let's, for the sake of argument, say there's 3. Why are they so terrified? They've got 3,000. They've got 300 on their side. Everyone, open your newspaper, whoever it is. You've got Little John over there, Amanda Platel over there. God knows who's writing for The Sun these days, but they're almost certainly writing for The Spectator at the same time. You've got The Telegraph, absolutely, like the bar in Star Wars. There's so many weirdos on the opinion pages of the Daily Telegraph. So let's say you've got 2 or 3 people who are not cheering the abuse of refugees and the pretense that it's built on some sort of concern for their plight. Why are they so terrified? Well, the answer's really simple. They're not terrified of dissent. They're not terrified of criticism. They're not terrified of Gary Lineker. They're not terrified of his tweet. They're terrified of the truth, because the entire project is built on lies. Think about it for just 5 seconds. Lies about the European Union, lies about immigration, lies about nurses, lies about junior doctors, lies about railway workers, lies about teachers, lies about baggage handlers, lies about Meghan Markle, lies about Prince Harry, lie after lie after lie after lie after lie. What are you going to be most terrified of if your whole life is built on lies? Lies. Boris Johnson, man, is their hero. What better proof can there be of the tyranny of lies under which we live than the fact that the biggest liar ever to draw breath on the public stage in this country is not only able to become Prime Minister, but he remains the hero of these people and is going to reward some of the nastiest elements of that media cabal with seats in the House of Lords. He's already put Charles Moore, former editor of the Daily Telegraph, in the House of Lords. He wants to put Paul Baker, former editor of the Daily Mail, in the House of Lords. He wants to give Ted Verity, current editor of the Daily Mail, a knighthood. They're not frightened of criticism. They're not frightened of dissent. They're not frightened of Gary Lineker. They're not frightened of Twitter. Not really. These are just symptoms of their terror, symptoms of their fear, because what they're really frightened of is the truth. And that's why sometimes, rather than thinking I reach for George Orwell analogies too often, I worry that I don't reach for them often enough. Think about this. You live in a country where a sports broadcaster expressing a relatively innocuous and evidence-based opinion about some legislation that is being roundly condemned by everybody from the Board of Deputies of British Jews right through to the United Nations Refugee Council is coming under attack, not only from right-wing newspapers and broadcasting seagulls that follow the trawler that is the Daily Mail, but also, in a sense, from within the BBC itself. Bringing on someone called Matthew Saeed this morning to slag off Gary Lineker. Someone on Rupert Murdoch's payroll gets brought in to slag off Gary Lineker while a BBC presenter sits there like a nodding dog, thinking that they have to pursue this ludicrous agenda because if they don't, it'll be their turn to get turned over in the pages of the Daily Mail. Who doesn't get accused of being biased over at the BBC? Who? People that are essentially doing the work of the Tories. That's quite a charge. They're the only ones that never get it. Never get it in the neck. To not get it in the neck from these monsters, you've got to be on their side. Whether you mean it or whether you're just doing it because you're scared. It's impossible for outsiders to tell, but do not make the mistake of thinking that there is some sort of opposition here. This is terror of the truth. And I don't know. I'm pretty sure that Lineker's safe for the very simple reason that for him not to be safe would be a mark of absolute madness. But I also know that there are very, very few people who are secure enough to do what he's doing, to stand by your principles in the face of epic abuse, institutionalized abuse, deeply dishonest political abuse from deeply dishonest politicians whose entire project is built on lies. Lies about refugees, lies about the European Union, lies about Brexit, lies about... I could go on, I often do. Why are they going after him? Because they're terrified of what he represents. And it's a tragedy. I'm envious. It's a tragedy that you've got to have that security, the security that Carol Vorderman talks to me about, the security that Gary Lineker displays today. Because if they take away what you've got, you lose everything. You lose your platform, you lose your voice. And that's also why Twitter is such a problem for them, because they can't control it. If they can't control the media, they can't keep the truth out, which is a fairly portentous analysis of a single tweet by a single sports broadcaster. But that's how bonkers Britain has become. That's where we are now. And just have a look at all of the people leading the line on attacking Gary Lineker.
Refugee agency.
Council on UN, well, the UN Refugee Agency. We're coming under attack from them, and they're launching attacks on judges and football commentators.
My mother-in-law, she's Brexiteer through and through, and
really?
parents, and they read the Daily Express on a daily basis. I'm not talking to them, for
Rishi, Daily Express. Rishi lays down law. We decide who comes here.
But when I said before, when Brexit was happening, and they were like, they find out that they voted for Brexit, they ask why, or to stop immigrants coming to this country. I said, but what about me? I'm married to your daughter. I'm your granddaughter. It's half Welsh, half Bosnian. But we don't think of you. No, it's not you. It's them. Because I'm maybe because I'm white. Maybe. If I was brown,
maybe. And there's 100 million. She writes in the Daily Express today, and I had to check this because I thought someone might have photoshopped it.
It was on BBC. She got challenged about that this morning, and she said, let's not hang up about the numbers.
It gets
She's
worse.
quick enough to say that.
It gets worse, mate. You think and I think that she said 100 million, right?
Yeah.
She actually said, I'm going to find it, she said...
billion.
You've seen it, have you?
Yeah.
Up to 1 billion people are going to could try to come here. Up to 1 billion people could try to come here. That's beyond stupid.
Yeah.
It's in realms that I lack the words to properly describe.
But my 12-year-old daughter, born in this country, she's, half Welsh, half Bosnian, like I keep saying, to ask, yes, they come back from school and watching news, Daddy, do you need to leave? Are they going to make you leave this country? I was like, that she's grown up, like your previous listener said, her daughter grew up with this, government. For my daughter to be afraid, because I got different accent and different name, am I going to be kicked out from this country? Maybe after this phone call, maybe I might have someone knocking on the door saying, revoke your citizenship. How things are going.
I can laugh with you for now, but I look at what the National Front was calling for in the 1970s, an immediate ban on this, that, and the other, and then the next stage was the beginning of forced repatriation for people, and that is the road she is going down. She hasn't gone all the way down it, just as they haven't gone all the way down the Nazi rhetoric of the 1930s. They're still... in the early parts of the path, they're still, if it was the yellow brick road, they'd still be in Munchkin Town, but they're on the yellow brick road. Where they go next, we'll have to wait and see. You'll like this, Ed, and I'm going to read it quickly from Chris. He says, the Bosnian interpreter talking to James, referring to his mother as ma'am rather than mum or mom, makes me smile so much. He's as Welsh as I am, and obviously makes the country better just by being here.
We put a lot of meaning in a signature. It signifies the start of something great. And now it's even easier to get them with Dropbox Sign, a simple e-signature solution right in the platform you already trust. A new business relationship. A new teammate. A new place to call home. Because you have better things to do and get lost in the shuffle of paperwork. Get seamless e-signatures right where you work. For all things worth signing, Dropbox Sign.
I can't find an article that lists all of the organisations and august individuals criticising Suella Braverman's illegal immigration bill.